thank you all again for coming, and I'll hand this off to Alexis.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to see some familiar names on the Zoom call. Just to make sure everyone is good for the recording, I know it's the first presentation, so I want to make sure we're good. Vinny, okay?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to get started here. So good evening, everyone. My name is Alexis O'Rourke, and I want to thank you again for coming tonight. I know not everyone is a sustainability professional, and a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is new technology, but I'm so excited to share it with you. And full transparency, I'm also very nervous. I've been working on this project since October of last year. I know that sounds really crazy, but it really just happened on a whim. I visited the Bronx Zoo in September, and about a month later, I was able to get in contact with my current client, and really the rest is history. So let's dive into it. So here's tonight's agenda. I'll be giving you an overview of essentially what my findings are. This project has gotten a lot bigger than what I thought it was going to be initially, which is great. But if you have any questions or want to dive deeper into the content at all, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat like Lionel said for the Q&A. I also have paper notes, so if anyone hears it, I'm sorry, I'm a little old school here. So a bit about myself. I have a background in architecture. That's what my undergrad is in, with construction management, and I'm currently working as an architectural designer. I've always had a passion for sustainability and conservation, and I have been a longtime visitor of the Bronx Zoo. I believe that this project is at the intersection of design, innovation, and a love for wildlife. So again, my client is the Wildlife Conservation Society. They own the Bronx Zoo. I've been working with them for the past roughly 7 months, and I'll be referring to them as the WCS, and specifically their exhibition and graphics arts department. I did see them hop in, so thank you so much for joining in on this call. So the WCS was founded in 1895, and they work to conserve the world's largest wild places. Their work spans 14 priority regions in 60 different countries throughout America, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. They also own and manage the Bronx, Central Park, Prospect Park, and Queens zoos, as well as the New York City Aquarium. Their 5 parks see roughly 4 million visitors annually, and the Bronx Zoo alone sees 2.5 million of those visitors each year, which is nearly 1/3 of the New York City population. Those are a lot of people we have to cater to. So my focus today is going to be on 2 parking lots within the Bronx Zoo campus. These are them here. They're named the Overflow parking lot and the Bronxdale parking lot. The selected sites house a combined 40% of the total parking within the Bronx Zoo. The Bronxdale parking lot is currently developed with little to no green infrastructure intervention, and the Overflow parking lot is mostly underdeveloped. So we have 2 very different sites here. And it only has a single roadway, which is paved, which is how people get to their cars, essentially. Very old school there. There is also the Mitsubishi Riverwalk, which you can see kind of highlighted right here. Hopefully you guys can see my cursor in a lighter brown color, which is a free exhibit, and it runs alongside the Bronx River. So the scope of this project, as I had mentioned, grew significantly as I continued my research, and I determined it would be best to divide this project into 3 different goals: environmental concerns, safety concerns, and visitor experience. Each of these goals will be addressed in the design proposal later on. There are site-specific solutions which will help to respond to the natural environment and meet my clients' for future developmental goals. These 3 goals will also help to quantify the success of this project at the completion. So as a part of this research, I conducted a public survey of around 100 respondents between the ages of 15 and 78 years of age. Respondents were located and or had visited the New York City greater metropolitan area. They were not required to visit the Bronx Zoo and were given no information about this project prior to actually taking the survey. I was really interested to see what people would say, and strikingly, 35% of those who visited the zoo were not aware of which entrance they came from, which is absolutely insane. 42% of the participants entered from the Bronx River Entrance and then parked somewhere within the zoo. Again, not really sure where. The projects, the 83.5% of the respondents were not familiar with the Riverwalk exhibit, which is also a big part of my design proposal. So I wanted to highlight that as well. And it's also striking because the people who are entering from the Bronx River Entrance are actually passing by the Riverwalk exhibit and should, be able to see the signage and enter to experience that exhibit. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into the selected sites before I give you my proposal. So the existing circulation of the Bronx River Entrance is quite congested, even during off-season. So as you can see, I'm going to use my cursor again, hopefully. The Bronx River Parkway is right here, and then we go to the Bronx River Entrance. So I want to highlight that for anyone who may have not been to the Bronx Zoo before or entered from this side. Traffic often backs up onto the Bronx River, causing dangerous conditions onto the Bronx River Parkway, and this entrance also lacks a sense of arrival in place. Guests are merely welcomed by a vast parking lot and wayfinding leading to a panic shuffle to the nearest bathroom, because that is what most people said in the public survey, not surprisingly, because we've all been in that situation. So now I wanted to essentially compare the findings of the public survey, which I had taken, with the Bronx Zoo master plan and the intermodal transportation facility proposal, which my client had provided to me. Surprisingly, most of the findings aligned with one another, and most people ended up traveling to the Bronx Zoo by car. So the parking capacity at the Bronx Zoo reaches maximum at 30 days out of the year. So for the other 330-ish days, we're not at capacity, and we have plenty of space to do other things with the parking lots. So we want to explore alternate uses for the underutilized spaces, especially since parking takes up so much of the site. And we also, just to reiterate, we want to talk about the 2 parking lots, which are significant because, again, they hold about 40% of the parking capacity total throughout the Bronx Zoo. Very quickly, I want to note that in my final report, I did give a full plant inventory analysis, which was developed as part of the Bronxdale Upland Restoration Project, which is also called the BURRP program. That was done in the early 2000s. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm just giving you some really pretty pictures with some keywords to help you start thinking about sustainability in a different way and inventorying the plants that may be around us. So to talk a little bit about existing stormwater management, let me say this, there isn't much. A major consideration for the site is the runoff to the Bronx River, especially from the Bronxdale parking lot. So essentially the runoff can damage the marine ecosystem, not only within the Bronx River locally, but also downstream. So we want to address this to reduce that impact. So before I made my proposal to my client, I wanted to see what our competitors are doing. The Birmingham Zoo is down in Alabama, depending on where you are. And they recently invested into a new multi-purpose entrance building. And the Rosamond Gifford Zoo, they focused specifically on a parking lot that they had. They used green infrastructure such as porous pavement, which is something that I'll go into a little bit later. To capture 4.2 million gallons of runoff annually. And finally, the Cincinnati Zoo, which is, if you've ever been there, which I haven't, but I definitely am going to travel there now, one of the most sustainable zoos out there, and nationally they are recognized for this, which is what the LEED Gold stands for. And they continue to be at the forefront of sustainable zoos for their goals for net zero energy, water, and waste. So we definitely want to take a look at what they're doing and see how we can implement it at the Bronx Zoo locally. Another really interesting study, it's not just about design, it's also how do people experience design. And with zoos in particular, people are choosing to come to zoos in their extracurricular times usually, and we even bring kids to schools, from schools to zoos for educational purposes. But there's also a study that was conducted about visitor experience and their willingness to engage in conservation efforts. So the WCS has global conservation standards, which we talked about earlier in the presentation. So we want to make sure that the visitors that we're bringing in have those same standards, or at least learning about those conservation standards. And in short, the better the visitor experience is for our visitors, the more likely they are to engage in conservation efforts. And conservation efforts are not just like monetary things. People, you see those commercials that are like, hey, donate here and we're going to save an animal. It's not just about that. There's a lot more that goes into conservation than just monetary values. And the first step of that is educating our visitors. So that's going to be a part of the visitor experience within this proposal. So the Bronx Zoo isn't all bad. I know I highlighted some other zoos, but I want to make sure that everyone is aware of the different on-site systems that the Bronx Zoo has, and they've worked towards actively towards being sustainable. Many people didn't know in the public survey of any sustainable practices at the zoo, so I felt like it was necessary to highlight this. Before I discuss the system specifically, I want to give a little bit of background about each of their goals. So essentially what this diagram is telling you, if you look to the top left-hand side, that box will talk about rain gardens and bioretention areas, which are essentially very vegetated areas, usually or hopefully with native plants, allowing for the greatest amount of retention, while porous pavement, which is the bottom left side, is not vegetated, but still provides a great level of retention. And that's just how these systems are built. There's other options for capture and reuse of stormwater, which is such as like cisterns, which we go into the proposal as well. So now that I've given you a crash course in sustainability, now we're going to talk about the on-site systems that are currently working at the Bronx Zoo. While the proposal will remove specifically the Bronx River restroom, which is to the right-hand side of the screen, we are going to re-implement that into the proposal that we're giving to the client. The other systems, such as the Asia parking lot and the Jungle World Road permeable pavers and bioswales and rain gardens, were implemented to address flooding concerns which happened after Hurricane Sandy. And this is actually how my project started, speaking with the zookeeper about the mitigation efforts that they were working towards. So not every conversation that you have with zookeepers is going to be about animals or just like, hey, where's the nearest restroom? They have some really great friendly staff, and I want to extend their thanks for, again, allowing me to kind of dive deep into this project because it's about to get really interesting. So what do you do with all this information? Well, I finally want to speak about the proposal. So again, this is similar to the existing circulation plan. Essentially, to address the safety concerns, I'm going to propose a 2-lane traffic circle, which will allow separate entry points to the overflow parking lot into the zoo, as well as into the Bronxdale parking lot. So I'm just going to use my cursor. So overflow, into the zoo, Bronxdale parking lot. The traffic circle will also allow traffic to be continuous, whereas there's currently stop signs which cause significant amount of congestion. There will also be separate lanes for people to go from the Bronx River Parkway, again following my cursor, and into the Bronx if they decide not to visit the zoo and maybe they're locals. The overflow parking lot will then be developed. It'll be sectioned into 5 smaller parking areas and each have a designated pedestrian path connecting to the Riverwalk itself. So the Riverwalk actually becomes a circulation space. The Riverwalk connects the new Welcome Center, which will help provide a sense of arrival and place. So one of the things, if you guys don't have an architecture background, that we want to really highlight in this proposal is the idea that visitors right now, they are in a parking lot, and that's not fun. We want them to get excited as soon as they enter, and we want this to be the new face of the Bronx Zoo. So this L shape here is directed the viewpoint into the center of the Bronx River Entrance. This circle was inspired by the Fordham Road entrance, which many people both on the survey and who actually go to the zoo have not experienced in recent years since it's been closed off, but really want to have that sense of arrival because they know as soon as they get through those gates, those rainy gates, where actually are a historical landmark, that they're at the Bronx Zoo. So we want to recreate that in a different space here. To address the concerns of safety and visitor experience, again, we've talked about the the traffic circle, the parking lot, and the welcome center. The remaining overflow lot can also, so up in the north here, can also be used for multi-purpose outdoor community event spaces. The Riverwalk is a free exhibit, so it's actually, while it's a part of the zoo, anybody can go there without like admission tickets, and it provides public access to the Bronx River. So that's actually part of the WRP program in New York City. It's a requirement that this access to the river is given to the community. It's a very unique location and we must take advantage of it. And personally, I think the idea of like a locals farmers market would be great for this type of space. So now we're going to go back into the sustainability aspect. I know we're juggling design and sustainability, but essentially there's many different initiatives which can be implemented to reduce the stormwater runoff in the Bronxdale parking lot, specifically in the bioretention area, which you can see here where my cursor is. There's also an underground cistern which can be used in the parking lot to collect and slowly reduce the stormwater, which you can see here. That water will then be slowly released back into the ground. Viney plants could be used as the natural barrier between the Bronxdale parking lot and the ramps of the Bronx River Parkway, so over here. And the developed areas of the overflow parking lot in this area, all of these 5 different spaces, can be developed with grass and gravel pavers, which will ensure the surface remains porous. Finally, natural rock formations, which if you haven't read a topo plan, I'll point a couple out. One here, here, definitely in this area, and there's also some at the current entrance of the Bronx Zoo. Essentially what we could do with these rocks is we can promote natural moss growth, which can be done with like a sprinkler system, and the water from that system can actually be from the stormwater system, which we use to capture the rainwater in the underground cisterns here. So again, talking about reuse, capture. Finally, I'm going to go into the concept of the Welcome Center. It is very simple, and it's done for a reason, right? I didn't want to take away from the natural landscape because the whole point is to give back to the landscape, not to take away from it. So here's what a rendering of the new Welcome Center could look like. The mast is angled again towards the entrance so that it directs the visitors to the center space, which is a circular mast. There is a mast on the interior of the glass wall, and the vertical mullions within the glass wall will bring the visitors' eyes up to the sky, expanding the space and really taking them away from the building and back into nature. The building also slopes with the site to further reduce the visual impact of the building, and it also helps to tier the spaces so that people can have different experiences if they enter from one side or the other. Finally, I want to talk about some next steps for the project because it is quite expansive, which I know I've mentioned several times. Looking into other sustainable practices such as solar is something that I didn't do, but definitely could be done. New York City has several different incentive programs which can be used to help fund them. Other funding and stakeholder engagement, a lot of zoo funding comes from private stakeholders, so we can have incentive programs for those stakeholders. Hey, do you want your name on this design? Sure, let's do it. And you know, they give us lots of money to be able to build it. Unfortunately, fortunately, I guess, we have the advantage of being on city-owned land, even though that they kind of gifted us this space. So we can find our funding from many different means. We also want to talk about a project team and what that means. So we can gather architects, engineers, other designers. We're definitely going to need some landscape architects and civil engineers, and many, many others who will help to assemble the project once it's actually like the design has been accepted. And then finally, we talk about project phasing. So what happens after this design has been accepted and we say, hey, this looks really great. My recommendation would be that we phase the project in a way that it mirrors the goals that we would like to meet. First, starting with the visitor experience or the safety concerns, you know, adding in that traffic circle in the parking lot first before we add in a building, perhaps. There's many different ways that we can implement this project, which is great because it's flexible. Finally, I want to end off by calling you to make sustainable decisions in your everyday life. You don't need to be a sustainability professional. You don't need to be a designer, an architect, or somebody in the field. You can make a small effort every single day that will have a larger ripple effect. Just by even coming into this presentation today and listening to our ideas and learning more about sustainable practices, you're already making the first step. So I commend you for that. So thank you for everybody who came here today, as well as like my friends, my family, my coaches, mentors, and professors who've walked with me on this journey for my graduate degree. Kind of bittersweet, may cry later. And thank you again to my client for humoring me and allowing me to take on this massive project that I definitely kind of overdid it. But I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'm very, very, very excited to hear what everyone has to say and what your questions are. Thank you.